Today we're back looking at some more true crime TikToks.
Just when I thought I heard about all the worst cults in history, this one had to come and blow them out of the water. This is Colonia Dignidad. They were a German torture cult hiding out in the Chilean wilderness after World War II, aka Yazis. And to show you how terrible they were, let me tell you a story. And as a quick reminder, if you want more info, you can check out the podcast. The leader of this cult was a known child abuser, and he wanted more Chilean boys to be brought to him. So he started a hospital in the community and used it as a trafficking system to get more children. One day, a young Chilean boy choked and was rushed to the hospital. And right when he got there, a nurse scooped him up, brought him to a room, and saved his life. But later that day, his sister arrived and asked a nurse when she could pick him up to take him home. And the nurse responded that they needed to monitor him for a few more days, which is pretty suspect in a choking case. So a few days later, she comes back and she's like, "Okay, can I get my brother?" And the nurse tells her that he's not there anymore. And this is because the hospital had lawyers on staff that were drafting up adoption paperwork when young boys would come in. The cult was able to legally adopt boys in the community without the parents' consent, and the parents had not enough money to do anything about it. There are so many more stories about this place, and I had never heard of it before, so make sure you check out this week's episode for more info.
I think we sometimes forget whenever we watch these TikToks that these things actually happen. So that was basically a hospital that would pick up little boys and like sell them off to that man. It's quite horrible to think that that like actually happened. As a Chilean, I was not expecting Colonia Dignidad. It was a very well-known case in our country and terrifying to think about. Exactly, it's terrifying to think that like it actually happened. And also whenever it comes to cults, I think they're so interesting but also so terrifying. It's the fact that there's like a leader who usually is not a nice person, and they usually harm a lot of children. I've noticed that. If you've ever watched cult documentaries on Netflix, like it's always men who are just weird. Like I've never really heard of a cult that like a woman runs. As a Chilean, I used to hear these stories as a child and I thought it wasn't real. That's starting to make me think maybe all the stories I heard growing up are actually real. You know, Bigfoot, Carmen Winston, you know, all the urban legends you heard whenever you were younger that genuinely terrified you. Maybe they were all real.
This girl was killed by the last person anyone would suspect. On the 8th of March 2020, Brittany Ulaki shouted to her dad James, "I'll beat you home." Brittany had just been watching her dad play in a band and had organised a lift home with her best friend.
Oh no.
The friend in question was 18-year-old Bryce Dickey. Brittany and Bryce were so close that she actually referred to him as her big brother. Brittany was 16 years old and Bryce was always there for her and her family. However, that day, far from beating her dad home, she would actually never turn up. Brittany and her family lived in Nevada. The area had a safe community feel, and Brittany's dad trusted Bryce to get his daughter home safe. However, as time ticked on, James got really worried. He sent several texts to his daughter trying to see when she was due home. He also tried to call her but got no response. When investigators got involved, they interviewed 18-year-old Bryce. All they knew was he was the last reported person to have seen her. Now, at the time, he reported being equally concerned about her whereabouts. He told police that they'd driven round for 3.5 hours before he dropped her off at Spring Creek High School. He said that she told him she was meeting up with a new friend. Unfortunately, he didn't know who this was. He last saw her getting into a green pickup truck, and he reportedly saw a white tall male in a cowboy hat. He told police that he was so concerned he'd sent several Snapchat messages to Brittany, but she hadn't responded. Then on the 11th of March, a terrible discovery was made. Brittany's body was found. She'd been wrapped in tarpaulin and there was evidence that she'd been AR'd before she was killed. Bryce expressed his sorrow on social media. He referred to her as sis and wrote, "We love you so much, just know that you won't ever be forgotten." Things started to unfold, however, when Bryce gave a DNA sample. Now, prior to this, Bryce had told police that his and Brittany's relationship was completely platonic. However, after the DNA sample, it was clear that Bryce had had sexual contact with Brittany. He then decided to change his story. He said that he had been physical with Brittany, but this was nothing to do with the murder. However, when police searched his house, they found blood-stained boots and he was arrested. It became clear that he had made up the story of the pickup truck and the male in the cowboy hat. At his trial, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and he got life.
I will never understand, first of all, why somebody commits a crime like that, and second of all, why they lie about it. Do you honestly think you're gonna get away with it? Does anyone know why he did it? He probably had a crush on her and she denied him. Sadly, some men are like that. Some men can't deal with rejection, so in their head, if they can't get that girl, no one else can get them. That's so sad. She trusted him so much and he took advantage of that. I can't even imagine what her final thoughts were. That's what's so scary. It's the fact that, like, he done that. Was he planning it all along? She viewed him as a brother, and obviously he viewed her in a different way. But it's the fact that she trusted him and then he done that. This is why he can never never really trust anyone. I used to live in Elko and I went to school with this girl. That's quite freaky though. It's the fact that you went to school with somebody and now they're no longer here. I mean, we all die eventually, but it's the fact that like you knew her and yet again she was 16. That is so young. It's just so awful, isn't it? And I think what's even more heartbreaking about the whole case is the fact that someone close to her done it. She was meant to be safe with somebody she trusted.
This 14-year-old boy is one of the UK's most dangerous killers. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Joe Galen.
I think I remember
Today's
this.
case takes place in Bury, Manchester in 2006. Joe is an 11-year-old, very well-liked, charismatic boy who loved everything to do with football and had cystic fibrosis. On the 1st of March, he receives a handwritten note from 14-year-old Michael Harmer, who had told Joe that this was a note from the deputy head teacher. The note instructed Joe that he had to go home with Michael that night, that he was his mentor, and that his mum was going to pick him up from there after school. Joe had mentioned the note to teachers who had questioned it, not believing that it had actually came from the deputy head teacher. This teacher was partway through advising Joe not to do it when the fire alarm went off, disrupting the conversation and forcing all the students to evacuate the school. Michael had in fact fabricated the note in order to lure Joe back to his house. He had developed some sort of obsession and fascination with Joe, and maybe experienced some sort of jealousy towards Joe. Michael was quite the opposite of him. He was very reserved, very quiet, and he didn't really have any friends. When the boys arrived at Michael's house after school, he proceeded to make sexual advances towards Joe. Joe rejected these advances, calling Michael gay, and threatened to tell everyone in school what Michael had just tried to do. Filled with rage and probably feeling extremely embarrassed, Michael picked up a frying pan and proceeded to bludgeon Joe with it. He whacked Joe a total of 5 times with so much force that it had broken his eye socket and broke the pan. After retrieving 2 knives, Michael would go on to stab poor Joe 16 times. Some wounds were up to 8 inches long, and he had been stabbed in the neck, face, and his upper body. After murdering Joe, Michael dragged his body downstairs, hauled him into a bin, and began to wheel him to nearby Whitehead Park. This was at around 4:30 p.m. Back at their home, the parents of Joe began to worry. He wasn't the type of boy who would wander about after school. He was very rarely late, and he needed medical treatment for his cystic fibrosis that without could be detrimental. They knew that something wasn't right, and at 5:30 p.m. they contacted the police and reported Joe missing. Thankfully, the police took this serious immediately and launched a search. Meanwhile, Michael had gone home and was completely normal. He'd ate his tea, done his homework, had a bath, and then proceeded to sleep soundly in the bedroom where only hours prior he had committed murder. The search went on late into the night. However, it wasn't until the next day at around 10:30 a.m. that the body of 11-year-old Joe Galen was found by a police dog hidden under some debris. It was clear to the officers that found him that he was the victim of a vicious killing, thus turning the case from a missing person to a murder. People who were with Joe the day before or had any information on him whatsoever were all questioned. One of these people included Michael. He admitted that he had seen Joe after school, but that they had only just briefly spoke in the street before going their separate ways. But this didn't sit right with some of the school staff. Michael was changing his story, and then remembering the note, this just didn't add up for the staff. Within an hour of finding Joe's body, Michael is escorted out of the school and is arrested. Initially, he did try to deny any involvement with Joe's murder. However, after a few hours, he made a full confession. A search of his house would find the note that lured Joe to his house, along with several other ones where Michael had wrote his sexual interest in Joe. At Manchester Crown Court on the 16th of October, Michael pled guilty to murder and was given a life sentence with a minimum term of 12 years to serve.
12 years.
This was later uplifted to 15 years. In 2016, he made a plea to have his sentence reduced, which was denied. He was able to apply for parole in March 2021, but I couldn't find anywhere if he had or if he has been released or not. Next week will mark 17 years since poor Joe was callously killed. He was a happy, bright young boy who did not deserve the end he was met with.
Yet again, that right there is just proof that you can never ever trust anyone. That's just so awful. Yet again, for it to happen to an 11-year-old, but a 15-year-old done that. Why are children killing children? Drew lived on my street and we used to play out together. His death still lives with me. Yet again, that's just so heartbreaking. It's the fact that you used to play with that kid and now he's no longer here. His life's ended, but like the whole world carries on. You know, your life didn't end. That's just weird, isn't it? And yet again, to me, I think it's so awful that somebody can do that, but it's the fact that it was done by a 15-year-old. What 15-year-old is planning stuff like that? The teachers could have saved him. I mean, that is true, because put it this way, they were reading like that now. What deputy or like principal is gonna write an 11-year-old boy a note saying that like they have to go home with a student and their mum will pick them up? Like, that doesn't happen. So he's out at 29 while life should mean life. I mean, I'm with you there. Like, he's literally gonna be out soon. If he got like 12 to 15 years and it happened 17 years ago, he should be out now. How old would he be? Like 29? That's like pretty young. And yet again, to me, it's just confusing that he could do that at 15. If someone ever commits a crime like that, they should never be allowed out of jail. Life means life. Like, they should never ever get out of jail.
Do you remember the story of the adult woman who was pretending to be a child in order to get adopted? Well, the story is so much crazier than that. In 2010, the Barnett family adopted Natalia Grace, a 6-year-old girl from Ukraine. But shortly after the adoption, the family claimed that Natalia wasn't who she said she was. She couldn't speak any Ukrainian, which the family thought was weird, but she was also showing signs of being post-puberty, meaning she probably wasn't 6 years old. So the parents got a bone density test done on her, and the doctor said that she was at least 14, if not older. And on top of that, her behavior was starting to become menacing. She would stand over the parents' beds at night saying she was just waiting for the right time, and she threatened violence against the 3 other sons. One time she even tried to poison the mother. But what do the parents do? They get her age legally changed to 22 years old, rent her an apartment, and leave her in it by herself. They thought they were escaping a murderer, but many believe that they abandoned a disabled child.
I remember hearing about this story a few years ago, and to this day, I still don't know if she was just a disabled child or if she actually was 22. Maybe the parents were lying, but maybe they were also telling the truth. They say she apparently stood over her bed, tried to poison him, etc. Like, it's just a bit freaky. So was she pretending or not? That's what I'm wondering, because like, we don't know. Like, I've tried to look it up and like, I don't really know. The adoptive parents are trying to say that she was faking her age, her real parents are saying that she isn't. Like, it's just weird. Like, we don't really have an answer.
These pictures I'm about to show you are very disturbing once you know the story behind them. These are pictures taken of the Children of God, now known as the Family. They were a radical Christian cult that hit their peak around the early to mid-70s. Around that time, they had about 10,000 members in dozens of countries around the world. It started with this man, David Berg. He looks creepy, right?
Yeah.
It's because he was. He was a predator. Justified pedophilia, incest, rape, abuse of all kinds. All the members had to have sex with each other even if they did not want to. Even the children. He always told his followers that the world was going to end and that they were God's soldiers that were going to fight the Antichrist. Members had to drop out of society. They were only allowed to make money by begging on the street and selling like pamphlets that they were given. David Berg also promoted this thing called flirty fishing, where members, mostly women, would go out to bars and pick up men and have sex with them. They would try to convince them to join the cult, and if not, they would ask for money. It was literally trafficking his followers. One of the most disturbing things I've seen about this cult is the story of Davidito. The book where they explain how every cult member should raise their child. They advocate for child abuse of all kinds and incest. It also get his followers to send videos of women and children dancing naked and singing religious songs. If you want to hear more, I just released an hour-long episode on this cult, and I also talk about Ricky Rodriguez. He was born into this cult, and when he grew up, he realized he had been abused and that this cult was evil. He then killed one of the leaders of this cult and took his own life.
Something I've noticed with a lot of these cults is that religion is always involved. I don't have an issue with religion. If you want to be religious, you're entitled to be. However, I do believe people in religions need to be a lot more open to the fact that there's cult religions. You know, situations like that, basically, where someone claims to be like God and they have like loads of followers. Like, that's terrifying. terrifying. That's not very godly. It's never meant to be about God, and I think that's what you're gonna realize with a lot of evil people in religion. There's people out there who use religion to justify their evilness. Basically, they'll do a load of evil stuff and they'll be like, oh my God, you know, I'm such a bad person, I'll go and pray to my God, I'm sure he'll forgive me. There's certain things that cannot be forgiven. What that man done is one of them. You know, it's the fact that he basically made himself out to be God. Like, that's terrifying. That's why religious organizations need to talk about cults like that. There's a lot of documentaries on Netflix about people like that. I think one's called Keep Sweet Praying Obey. Like, if you've watched it, it's terrifying what some of these men do.
5 days ago, these two girls made a TikTok saying they found a dead body in the morning, but the thing is, they weren't lying. Two girls from Texas, aged 17 and 16, made a Snapchat of them stealing jewelry off of the dead body of a man they found in a drainage ditch. In the video, Bethany Martin, the 17-year-old, took the necklace off of the man's corpse and gave it to her friend who was recording. The younger teen told police that she put the medallion on her own gold necklace because it matched her fashion style. Both girls have been charged with theft to a human corpse, and police believe the man's death was a suicide.
Okay, well that genuinely makes me feel physically ill. First of all, if you ever come across a human body, don't touch it. Call the police. It's the fact that they've obviously found somebody and then stolen their jewelry. How low can you get? There's a video of her taking the necklace from the body. It's in Twitter. Of course it's in Twitter. Literally everything's in Twitter. I've actually noticed that Twitter's gotten really bad recently with posting gruesome stuff like that. Please don't go and look for it. It's the fact that they film themselves doing it as well. It's like they're trying to incriminate themselves. How could they do that all giggling? I would have literally cried and started panicking if I ever saw a dead body. I'm completely with you, and I feel like social media has desensitized a lot of people. You know, people see videos like that all the time in the internet. It's horrible. I'm telling you right now, if I came across a body, I'd probably faint. I don't want to witness something like that. I mean, he was dead, he don't need it, no more, might as well help it. Well, first of all, what they done was a crime. If you find a body and don't report it, you could literally go to jail, and they stole off it. How disrespectful do you have to be to somebody? First of all, they don't know how that person lost their life. They could have had it taken from them, they could have taken it themselves. It's the fact they also filmed it giggling while stealing the jewelry. I mean, how disgusting can you be? They definitely did this and worse. They recorded it in Snapchat and took pictures with him. They do not care, and I hope the judge goes hard. Honestly, I'm with you. I hope they are put in jail for a long time. It's the fact that they've came across a body. If you ever come across a body, report it to the police. Literally say, hey, a bit of emergency here. I found a body. What do I do? You know, you don't film it. You don't giggle, and you don't steal off it. Like, I hope they're in jail for a long time. Well, anyways, guys, that's where we're gonna leave that video there. That's some true crime TikToks. If we seem like more videos like this, let me know definitely will. Press back out, subscribe, and see you all tomorrow for another video.